Welcome everybody to our first Launch and Learn from 2021. I am Winston Castillo, HR coordinator from the Southern Block. Today we are going to talk about React with Jorge Mariel from Argentina. So let's start our Launch and Learn.
React that allowed us to use states and other React features without using class components. We can say it's a primitive way to share stateful logic. So hooks is not bringing something new to React, but it's improving it a lot. So if you ever work with React and class components, am I mute? Please let me know if I'm mute. Okay, let's continue. So if you ever work with React and class components, you will know that if you have a very big component, sometimes it could be a little bit messy. For example, if you have different logic in the same component, sometimes you have to split it, put it together. For example, start using, instead of thinking about the logic of the problem, you always have to think as a life cycle. Like for example, you have to add some able listeners. You have to add it in the component with the mount, and if you have to remove that listeners when the component is unmounted, you have to put it in the component without mount. So this generates a split in the logic, and you start joining some information that shouldn't be together. For example, if you have two listeners that are quite different, why do you should put it in the same method? It's quite not right, don't you think? So apart from that, we know that it's not easy to use classes, not only for us, but also for the computers. So if you try to add some event handlers, maybe you forget to bind this, you will have to, you're going to have problems. So doing the binding is quite confusing sometimes. You can use functions, arrow functions, and it managed in different ways. So using stateless components instead of classes bring us a lot of solutions, not only for us, as I said, but also for computers. For example, if you try to minify a class component, you will notice that it's much bigger than a class component, than a function component. So why hooks? Hooks, it's just easy, man. You can use it whenever you want, and you can split the logic from the component by itself. So you forgot about adding high order components and prevent the wrapper hell that is very common when you use state management, for example, Redux. And sometimes this is quite confusing. So let's get started with hooks. So this is the first hook that we are going to show, and is the use state. It allowed us to use states in stateless components. So let me show you. So here we have a very simple project made it with React and Next.js. So let me start with let me start it. So npm run that. Let's open it in localhost 3000. And here we have the project running. So what you can see is that we have 3 different examples that we are going to show you to use states. So let's get started. So let's do a counter. So we know that a counter is just a state that is going to sum 1 every time we click, for example, a button. So let's bring a button. We are using Material UI for the design. So if you want to this code, I am going to upload this to GitHub later. So let me add some properties to make it a little bit nicer. And let's see the onClick action. So when we want to do an event listener, we use, for example, this onClick action. And if we want to save this information, we can use states. We are in a class component like usual. So let me create a counter. Started with 0. So inside the button, we can show that this dot state state dot counter. And here in the action, we can just do a +1. So this is this dot set state. We need to have the previous state, so we can update it. And here we return the counter that is the previous state dot counter +1. Let me clean the code and let's try it. So we have a button, and every time I click it, is counting. That's as easy as you see it. So let's try to do this example, but with hooks. So let's go to another page that is exactly the same. The only thing is that the URL is different. That's all. So let me copy this button so we can compare it here. And let's create our first hook. We have to use the useState function that came from React. We can see that we're importing it from the React library. So the first value should be 0, and we are receiving an array that had 2 components. Let me show again in the presentation. So we have the useState function, the initial value, and we spread it. Spread the array that we are receiving in 2 values. The first one is the value by itself, and the second is the set state. So let's go back to the code and do that. Counter and set counter. Everything is right, and we can use this counter inside of the button without using the this.state blah blah blah. We just use it there as is it. So it's very simple. And in the action, instead of doing this mess, we could do just a simple set counter, and we say counter +1. As simple as that. Look, the code is so little that we can put it in the same line without. It's pretty easy to read, you know. Let me check if I go to the localhost counter hook. We can see that we have the same button that is working as right as the other one. So let's do the other two very fast because they're just a similar example, but with a different approach. So let's go to the checkbox, for example. Here I have the code. I pre-made this. So look, you have to have for the onChange param, you have to add a function that will set the state to the checked. So that's all. And we have to add here the check to false. Let's see if this is working. Let me open it in another tab. Oh, check it is not defined. Let me see. Check it here. Oh. There we are. So now it should be yep, should be working, and it's working. So let's go to the hooks, and we have this same example. Just let me copy this and show you. So the values in checked instead of this .state.checked, and the action, instead of doing the set state, we are doing the set checked. So let's add this. The second hook we are doing, and as simple as that. Well, the last one is very simple too. It's a text field. So let me grab it. You have this .state .text. Here we have the text, and we initialize it with an empty string, and the onChange action is as usual. Let's go to the hooks. We have to add the text and the set text. We started with an empty string, and the component looks like this. So in the value we have the text, and the onChange is just taking the event target value and set it to the text. We say both. Let's see. We have the hello world, and here we have. Notice that we have here in the. Oh, let me. There we are. Go to the component by itself. Here, the counter. We can see that instead of having states here, we have hooks. It's exactly the same. The only difference is that you're going to see it in a different place. That's all. Components. Let's go here to the. Look, you have the states here, and you have the hooks here. So let's do something more interesting. So there is another hook that is. Oh, sorry. If there are any question about the use state. Winston, I think you're mute.
Well, guys, this is a small break we had, so you can insert your questions in the chat in Facebook or Twitter. So we see that Camilo thinks that hooks are the best. So let's continue with Jorge. If you had any question, remember to write it right down in the video.
Awesome. Thank you, Winston. So let's continue. This is the second hook we are going to see. That is the use effect. As the name suggests, let me explain a little bit of the way we write it. We have to import the use effect from the React library, and we have two params that it receives. One is a function. You can one is a function that you can see it here that has a return function that is the cleanup. For example, if you have an event listener, you have to add the remove of it in the cleanup. And the second parameter are the dependencies. So let's see that in action. Let's close this one and open the JTalent. So if you ever work with JobCity, you know there is an app that is called JTalent. It's an internal app that we have to see our customers, our clients, the people that is working with us. So and in this demo, we decided to use it as an example. Of course, all the information that you're going to see is mock data. So just take it as that, mock data. So let's go to JTalent. And we have a very simple page with a search box and in the footer a list of data here. So let's go to our code. We have some code here just to show the things that I showed you some seconds ago, this one. And we have a list of use state hooks that we are using now. For example, we have the search and the set search that is just for the input here. We have the list, so we can show the information that we are searching, the loading, and the select item. That is when we do a click in an item in the list. So how can we fetch information from an API? So let me show you a little bit of this. So if you are if you can, how do you call this? If you write use effect, and there are some libraries in VS Code that allow us to see this. So this is almost the same that we saw in the here in the presentation. And we have here the effect. What we want to do, we want to fetch data. So when you want to fetch data, you just have to save it in somewhere. So let's do a fetch data. There is an async function. And we have to do the request. So let's use Axios for that. Wait, Axios. That is a get request. And let me grab the URL. So we are fetching to this URL. Let me close this so it's easier to read. And it's just a dev API that we have for JTalent. And we have our search value that we have in the state. So it's when we write, the URL is going to change. Well, we have to add some headers as the second parameter. There we are. So let's try this. Let's add a console log and see what is happening here. Just like that. So here we have the use effect. The first param is a row function that has a closure with fetch data that receives, that is an async function, and we have to call it. So we are not going to return anything because we don't need to do any type of amount in this case. Well, we declare it here and we call it here. So here we have the second parameter, that is an array of dependencies. So what are our dependencies? First, the first thing I can see is the search, because every time we do a search, we change the search value, we want to refresh this effect, so it will load again. And we can also, it's a good practice to add external imports or things that are not from the inside of this function. So I think that's everything set. We should see in console the result. So you are seeing that here we have an authorization token. So let me check if this is working as I expect. Well, let's reload. In the first reload, it's like doing a component did mount, and runtime last. Don't worry about that. And let's see the result. Result data X. Well, we have all the information here. So what I need to do next, I have to set the list of data. So let me do that. So come here. After we do the await, we need to. Yeah, perfect. We need to set the list. So in the list, we are going to put the result data. Let me comment this line. There we go. So the page reload by itself, and we can see that we have a list of items. And if I change here for hello, well, there is no client that is called hello, but we call client. There we are, and we can see in the network that we are sending the request every time I do a change. So my idea is to select one of the items. So for example, if I click here in JobCD, I want to see all the information that it has. So let me add the onClick function of the card. So I have here that the select, I am setting the selected item just the ID. So we can send the information to a model like this one, client model. Here we are. So let's do some changes. Let's add a loading. So the set loading should be here. So it's loading true. And here when we finish, it's loading false. Let's see how it looks. So we have a loading effect, and we don't have the fetch data here in the client model. So I am going to copy this exact thing, this use effect, but we are going to change the URL. So you are thinking why you are copying Jorge. It's not good to do that when you are coding. The best thing is to split that part of the code and leave it somewhere else so you can reuse it and change the variables that you need. Let's see that in a minute, but first I want this to be working. So I have the isLoading, set loading instead of the loading list. Let me change that, and the item, set items. So we have the ID that we are receiving as a prop, and we have to change the URL to match with the thing we need. There we are. So we have the new URL that brings the client with the respective ID. We have to do first an if conditional because if we don't have an ID, this is going to be an error. So let me do that here. If ID. Instead of doing the set list, let's do the set item. And the information that, yeah, we're receiving the information in result.data.data. So that should be, okay, let me change the dependencies. ID, Axios, it's set item, and I should do the same here. I didn't add it, so, but for me. Let's save this and see if it's working. So it's loading the data as we are expecting. So let's go for the next part. So you have any question about this? Please let me know.
Hey, Jorge. Well, we got a question from JP Ventura. Once we are using hooks, should we remove reducts?
Should we remove what?
Reducts.
But I can understand you. Could you write it, please?
Yeah, sure. Okay, one moment.
Redux.
Yeah.
Redux. No. Redux is compatible. You have to use the corresponding hook. When you use when you use hooks, you are not managing all the data in your project. Redux is an library that allows you to have a general state for all your project, and you can use it both. And you can import from the React Redux library some hooks that allow you to merge both and have the best of both worlds. So is there any other question, Winston?
Okay, I think that was the only question we got for now, so we can continue.
Awesome, thank you. Well, let's go to the third part. Now we are going to can create our own hooks, as it says, and use all the things without having to add a lot of hooks that aren't really necessary. For example, let's go to the code again and analyze it. So here I have 4 hooks, 5 hooks. Yeah, 5 hooks in total. But in the code, in the component by itself, we are using, let me check. We have 1 here, the list here, the loading here. That's all. We have the item, but I just mentioned it here. So how we can improve this in a way to, instead of, there we are, instead of copying the code in every component that is going to fetch data, how we can merge it and create our own custom hook. So let's see. I am going to add here a new constant that is called use. as we said in the presentation, you have to use the word use when you want to create your own hook. This is the way React knows that this is a hook. So we can use request, for example. So this is a function that is, let me see how we can. So the first thing I have to do is to take this, because we don't want to do the request here. We want to do it here. As you see, the URL is going to be fixed. So how can we change that? Well, let's add a use state that is called URL and the set URL. And by default, it's going to be an empty string. So we can replace the URL here and this looks fine. Instead of loading list, we can use a loading there we are. So we have a loading here that, so let me change this one. There we are. So let me see if I am. So here's a set list. We don't have a list every time we are fetching data. For example, in the case of the model, we are just having an object. So let me see how we can put this. I think the best way is a result state, don't you think? Const result set result. You can do set whatever you want, but I really like the word result. So you state that original, the first state should be now. Let's change here the result. Fetch data. Let me change all the dependencies as we need the URL here. Instead of the set list, we have to use the set result, and instead of the set loading list is the set is loading. So this is generic, but how we can really use it is, I don't see any way we can use this use request, because as you see at your right, at your right, we are receiving an array and we are disconstructurating it. So we have to do the same here. Instead of returning an array, we can return an object with data that we are going to need in our component. For example, instead of using the set result that we are not needing it, we can just return the result. We can use the is loading. We can use the set URL, because once the URL is set, you don't need to change it. It's an internal thing. That's all. So let's see if this is right. I think it's right. So let's check if we have any type of error in our component. So I don't see. Let me reload it. So we check. Everything looks good, but as we did it, we removed the effect here. So we have to add a new use effect, but it's a little different because we don't need to send the request here. We just need to set up the URL and something that is going to be listening to the change. So let's grab in the effect, we just do a set URL from the use request here. For example, const is an array, an object. Sorry, we are going to use the set URL from it, and we are taking it from use request. So I read it wrong. Sir, instead of set, no, set URL. Yep, this, well, okay. We also need to export the is loading and the result. So the result is, we need it in the, instead of the list, we have the result. And instead of the loading, is loading here. So let me this, and there we are. So let me do a clean of the code. This is the custom hook, and here this is needed because it's not in the custom hook. The list and the set list, we don't need it. So let's remove that. The loading, we don't need that. And the selected item we need it because we have to create we have to change the ID of the model so we can fetch the correct data. Let me see. I knew something wrong. Oh yeah, I see. I all forget about the dependencies. So here, what dependencies we have? Only the set URL, not so. I think this return should be removed, and we also have the search value here. There we are. Result.map. Why she didn't like that? Oh, I see. Because I didn't add the. There we are. Because we are sending a null value. So let's check. If I write the J, have the loading, and we receive the data. If I click, I can see the model. Let's change the model so it looks. This using the use request custom hook that we made. So let me grab it from here. And I will move it to here. It's the same one, but I will replace it. So because some of the variables are quite a little bit different. Let's go to the client and let's use the, instead of the use effect like we are having right here, let's copy the one we have in the JTalent component. So we have to set the URL, and that's all, as I think. Let's try that. So the URL, the correct URL for the component is this one, and instead of the search value is the ID value that we have. We receive it from the props. The is loading is not needed, and the item and set item, I think it's not needed. Let me check that. No, we don't need it. So what we need to import. Let me grab it from here. That is the same one. Or what do you mean? Like this. So we have from the use request, we have the set URL, the result, and it's loading. Here we have this loading, and the item we cannot just check if the item exists. We have the set URL, the result, and it's loading. That is the same that I made. So let's check that. Okay, I didn't import the user request from here. Let's do that. So it's not importing, so let me do it manually. There we are. Let's see. Do we have the file? Use request. Oh, I know. Oh, yeah, I know. I didn't import it from the JTalent because we were using it from here directly. So let's see if now it's importing it. There we are. Okay, all the dependencies that the new hook needs. There we are, and I think we have used effect too. Let me edit manually. And let's see. Oh, actions. That's right. Item is not defined. I know. Because we change from the component here result instead of client. So the instead of item. So let me do something more interesting. We can do it like this. Oh. And should be enough. Oh my goodness, fetch data. I didn't like that one. Sorry guys. When you live coding, the things happen. Token is not okay. I need to add the token here. There we are. Ready? Oh no, it's not. Sale. We have the set URL. This is the correct one, and the token is in the here. Should be right. It's from there. Oh my goodness. Let me check it again. I know. We are not checking because now we have the result as null. Maybe in the here is like this. Maybe. The maybe I know. Yeah, maybe the ID. We didn't check. Look at this. We didn't check if the ID was there. So this was the thing that was not working. So do you remember we made it? Um, Let me reload to check if this is working. There we are. So let's try opening one model, and the information is showing. So what we can say by looking at this code, we can do custom component as we want to match with our project. So imagine you have a lot of requests. You can just add one place to do all the requests, all the authentication, all that stuff without messing all your code or using high order components to do that. So you.
Hi guys, we had seen so much chat down there, so feel free to ask about what we are talking today. And remember to follow us in all our social media if you want more information about technologies or if you want to participate of more of this kind of topics. And also go to www.jetcity.com if you want more information about us. So there is not any other question, and thank you very much, you guys, that were trying to help Jorge to find out the answer. And thank you very much. Let's continue with the
So
chat.
there are more hooks that we are not going to talk about them today, but you can search from them. Use memo is a calculated. And use callback is to take actions without waiting for an effect. So you can call a function and you can store actions in the use callback. So this is all for me. Thank you for your attention. And if you have any question, please let me know. You have the source down below the presentation. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Jorge. It was an interesting chat today. It was interesting Launch and Learn. Remember to subscribe to our channel if you want more of this Launch and Learn, and take a free tour of all our videos we got currently in our channel. We will see each other next month. Thank you very much for joining us.
Bye bye.